Hello everybody. This is my final video for the summer term and today we'll be saying goodbye until after the summer holidays. Well done to those of you who have been on Purple Mash or DB Primary and completed work. Great work to those of you who have done both Purple Mash and DB Primary. This morning I'm going to read to you an extract from a book called The Borrowers, written by the author Mary Norton. The story is about small people who live under the floorboards and behind the skirting boards. The little family are called Pod, Homily, and their daughter Ariette. Their great fear is that they will be seen by the human beings who live in the house. This extract is from the first chapter. Underneath I've put a website where you can actually watch a little extract from the movie The Borrowers. "Why so quiet, child?" asked Mrs. May one day when Kate was sitting hunched and idle upon the hassock. "What's the matter with you? Have you lost your tongue?" "No," said Kate, pulling at her shoe button. "I've lost the crochet hook." They were making a bed quilt in woolen squares. There were 30 still to do. "I know where I put it," she went on hastily. "I put it on the bottom shelf of the bookcase, just beside my bed." And in this illustration, you can see Kate sitting on the hassock, and you can see Mrs. May sitting by the fire. I wonder when this story is set. I'll have a little think about that. When do you think it is? Is it a modern story or was it written about a time a long while ago? "On the bottom shelf," repeated Mrs. May, her own needle flicking steadily in the firelight. "Near the floor?" "Yes," said Kate, "but I looked on the floor, under the rug, everywhere. The wool was still there, though, just where I'd left it." "Oh dear!" exclaimed Mrs. May lightly. "Don't say they're in this house too." "But what are?" asked Kate. "The borrowers," said Mrs. May, and in the half light she seemed to smile. Kate stared a little fearfully. "Are there such things?" she asked after a moment. "As what?" Kate blinked her eyes. "As people, other people living in a house who borrow things." Mrs. May laid down her work. "What do you think?" she asked. "I don't know," said Kate, looking away and pulling hard at her shoe button. "There can't be, and yet—" She raised her head. "And yet sometimes I think there must be." "Why do you think there must be?" asked Mrs. May. We'll have a think about that. Why does Kate think there are people who live in the house who she can't see, but she knows must be there, and that they borrow things? Because of all the things that disappear. Safety pins, for instance. Factories go on making safety pins, and every day people go on buying safety pins, and yet somehow there never is a safety pin just when you want one. Where are they all? Now at this minute, where do they go to? Take needles," she went on. "All the needles my mother ever bought. There must be hundreds. Can't just be lying about this house." "Not lying about the house, no," agreed Mrs. May. "And all the other things we keep on buying, again and again and again, like pencils and matchboxes and sealing wax and hair slides and drawing pins and thimbles." "And hat pins," put in Mrs. May, "and blotting paper." "Yes, blotting paper," agreed Kate, "but not hat pins." "That's where you're wrong," said Mrs. May, and she picked up her work again. "There was a reason for hat pins." Kate stared. "A reason?" she repeated. "I mean, what kind of a reason?" "Well, there were two reasons, really. A hat pin is a very useful weapon, and—" Mrs. May laughed. Think about a hat pin was a long pin, sometimes decorated at one end, which people would put into their hats to keep them fastened onto their heads. And blotting paper was used when you wrote with ink. So I think that really helps you think about when this story was set. Mrs. May laughed suddenly, but it all sounds such nonsense, and she hesitated. It was so very long ago. But tell me, said Kate, tell me how you know about the hat pin. Did you ever see one? Mrs. May threw her a startled gaze. Well, yes, she began. Not a hat pin, exclaimed Kate impatiently. A whatever you call them, a borrower. Mrs. May drew a sharp breath. No, she said quickly, I never saw one. But someone else saw one, cried Kate, and you know about it. I can see you do. Hush, said Mrs. May. No need to shout. She gazed downwards at the upturned face, and then she smiled, and her eyes slid away into the distance. I had a brother, she began uncertainly. Kate knelt upon the hassock. And he saw them? I'll have to leave the story there, but here is another illustration from a book about the borrowers. And if you look at the size of the people in proportion to the things that you know the size of, like a postage stamp or the top of a bottle or a cotton reel or a glove. Look, this is Pod in the picture, and I wonder what he is using the glove to make. Why is Kate so quiet? Why does Mrs. May think the borrowers must be in the house? What reasons does Kate give for believing there must be other people in the house? What is a safety pin? How is a hat pin very useful to a borrower? Which adverb describes how Mrs. May spoke to Kate about her brother? So these are some of the things you could do after listening to that extract. You could make a house. Here are some houses that have been made, and I think you'll recognise this one. You could make little people to go in the house, or you could even make a garden to go with it. Here you can see some gardens that people have made using things from around their house. You could even write a story about these people. Look out tomorrow for the final video of the term, which will give you more ideas of things that you can do in the holiday. Goodbye, everybody.